folks who are registered to address us this evening. We won't be very technical about the timing this evening, but I'm going to ask that everybody try and keep their comments somewhere to 2 to 3 minutes just because of the time that we have before the start of the meeting. If I think it's running a little too long, I'll remind you, but hopefully it doesn't get to that point. Our first speaker tonight is David Gaby regarding the 180-day demolition moratorium.
Thank you,
Good evening, Mr. Gaby. State your name and address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Fenton. I've come here to speak this evening. As you know, the council passed a resolution some time ago calling for a 180-day moratorium on demolition of historic houses. Today, after announcing it on Thursday, the mayor and/or the Planning and Economic Development Department proceeded to demolish one of the 3 houses that we were discussing at that time, even though the Economic Development Committee is still meeting on the subject. I brought a fact sheet with me today. I'd like to draw people's attention to a couple of salient facts. At the same time, I'd pass these out to folks who didn't get them. This is one of our houses that's it's not only in our local historic district, it's a nationally registered landmark by the National Park Service. It was recognized as one of the significant houses in the city in the brochure that was just used in by the Preservation Trust in our recent house tour event. The house was damaged, mostly in the attic, several years ago. We attempted to work with the owner. The owner did not have a clear title. Our bank would not allow us to proceed without a clear title. Last summer, we asked Attorney D'Souza, who was representing the city, to allow a receiver to go in and do the work. We found a receiver that volunteered. She has yet to contact that person. We're not sure, but it seems as though other agendas besides the good of the future of the city are being paid attention to. We're not sure, but we think that the City Council, we would ask that you strongly consider taking more definite action, because just having a resolution of expressing the idea does not seem to be having the effect that we desired. In particular, we're asking that the Council pass an ordinance providing for a compulsory moratorium on demolition of National Register buildings, as well as, I should have added in here on the back, as well as National Register eligible buildings, while the city developed means to ensure that the funding for restoration is equal to demolition. We've been, for the past 10 years, constantly in the situation where city officials are telling everyone in the neighborhood, such and such house, we can only demolish it, we can't fix it. We have no funding for anything except demolition. We shouldn't be operating the city this way. The second thing is where this was done while we were in good faith working with city officials to develop a different approach. We think that there should be some specific consequences, and we would like, without being rude to anyone, because I think everyone's acting in good faith, like to see that this property is not designated as an adjoining lot to be sold.
If you could just wrap up, Mr. Gaby.
To be sold to anyone, but that it should be preserved for development of a house identical to the one that has been demolished. We'll be happy to work with the city and with city officials to get that to happen. At the same time,
thank you.
We would ask that we consider. That's enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaby. Okay, our next speaker is Victor Sanchez. Good evening, Mr. Sanchez.
Good evening.
Name and address, please.
60 Vinton.
Thank you.
Of Springfield. As most of you already heard, my name is Victor Sanchez. As the end of July, I'm going to be taking a pilgrimage to Poland to see Pope Francis speak live to the youth of Poland and to work with the youth of Poland. The reason why I'm here this evening, is to see funding to help me for this pilgrimage that I'm going to be taking all the way to Poland at the end of July. Whatever help you guys can give me, it would be great to be helped for my pilgrimage all the way to Poland. And I will make one promise, though, if you guys do see it in your heart to help me fund this trip, I will pray for each and every one of the city council members and the fantastic job that they're doing to lead this city. Thank you.
Victor,
Councilor Williams.
will you tell them what parish you belong to?
Blessed Sacrament in the north end of Springfield. The leadership is by Monsignor Juan Garcia, and I am the first Hispanic chaplain's aide in the Diocese of Springfield, which I'm currently serving more than 3 years now in Blessed Sacrament in Springfield.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I hope that we all find in our heart to help Mr. Sanchez. I mean, I know his grandfather, Victor Sanchez, it goes back with Mr. Martinez and Barbara Rivera and Ben Ramos and all the great leaders in the North End. But he does a great job with Blessed Sacrament, hard working with the youth. And I hope that you give us a way we can make the donation. I don't know how, give us a package or something to get it back to our office.
All right, if you want, I can give you each with my business card with my address on here, or I can leave it with the office of the city council, where you can get it that way, or I can email it to the city council with all the information on there. And then when I come back, I can make a presentation to the city council on all the steps that I've taken over there.
Okay. If you get it to our staff, we'll make sure they make a copy for everybody.
Get it to the staff so we can get it out. When's the trip?
I leave the 22nd of July to the 4th of August.
Hey, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Dillard regarding the receivership program. Is Mr. Dillard here this evening? Last call for Mr. Dillard. Okay. The next speaker is Charlie Holmes. Mr. Holmes on the same subject.
Oh, my God.
Okay. Stephen Gray regarding demolition. Good evening, Mr. Gray. Name and address, please.
Stephen Gray. I live at 86 Bowden Street in Springfield.
Welcome.
One of the former mayors, Stebbins, of 1874, and I bought the house from them. And I've been in the McKnight area for well over half a century. I have tried over the many years to save a number of the houses and have done so, gotten a number of awards. I also manufactured American Dream modular homes, so I've been in the building business for about 6 decades now. And this is one of those houses that really could have been saved, as well as the number. I got very upset with 69 Bowden Street, which was across the street. There were 2 second French Empires, which are a mansard roof. Could have been saved within a matter of months, and the city would not work with us to save them. Very disheartening about it. Buddy Williams can attest to some of the properties I've done over, has a firsthand, and so I carry a number of licenses for different things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gray. Okay, our final speaker of the evening is Chip Harrington.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm Chip Harrington. I live in Ludlow, 122 Overlook Drive. I know Overlook Drive is a popular street for many people here, but mine's in Ludlow. As you know, I attend these meetings on a regular basis, and I stand before you this evening because I know you have a resolution that you're going to be discussing and voting on later. And I just ask you to please consider 2 things. The resolution pertains to, as I understand it, high-speed rail from Boston to Springfield. The first point I'd like to make is the term high-speed specifically. As I've done a lot of research in this topic, and high-speed brings up a certain image in people's minds that we're talking a bullet train, something that they do in Japan. This is a train that's going to maybe just stop less between Springfield and Boston. I think from the 50,000-foot level looking down, the study makes perfect sense. Let's take a look at it. But let's use the proper terminology. Let's take the word high speed out of it and say what we're really talking about is a train from Springfield to Boston, and that should be pursued. And it's a good idea that we pursue that. Secondly, and this will be my last point, is that the study itself has been funded for about $600,000. We just learned today that the Senate did not come up with $750,000 for the district attorney's office for programs that impact the opiates and the heroin problem that we're having in this area. This body is very important, not just to the city of Springfield, but to the entire region. I would ask that if you're going to take up a resolution, that you consider taking a resolution that funding be put forward for the $750,000 that the district attorney's office did not receive through the Senate, and that they support the House version, which would do that. It's an epidemic that we're dealing with. Everybody in this room understands it. You recognize it. And it reaches beyond the city limits. It reaches into the suburbs. And that's why I stand before you tonight as somebody who lives in the suburbs, and the importance of this body, that you consider a resolution to that effect as well, too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. Okay. So that will conclude our public speak out portion of the meeting. Mr. Clerk, it's 7 o'clock on the dot. So we're going to call this meeting to order. If you could please call the roll.
Councilor Hurst.
Present.
Present. Councilor Shea.
Present.
Present. Councilor Twiggs. Present. Councilor Allen.
Present.
Present. Councilor Rook. Absent. Councilor Bud Williams.
Present.
Present. Councilor Ramos. Absent. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Present.
Present. Councilor Gomez. Present. Councilor Ash. Present. Councilor Edwards. Present. Councilor Walsh. Absent. Councilor Finn.
Present. Will the council and our guests please rise for a moment of silence? Tonight's moment of silence will be offered in honor of the victims of the tragedy, the terrorist attack in Orlando. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Mr. Clerk.
First item is reports of committee.
Do you have any reports of committee this evening? Councilor Gomez.
Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening, colleagues. I have maintenance and development. David won't be with us today, so I'm going to give her a report. On June 16th, 2016 at 12, there was the discussion of an easement and takings for the Island Pond Road, Roosevelt Ave, and Alden Street project. The councilors that were in attendance was just Kateri Walsh, and also in attendance was Chris Signoli from DPW, Matthew Suckup from City Engineer, and attorney Kathy Breck, Law Department. Chris Signoli and Matthew Suckup from DPW Engineering explained the easement that's taken from the Island Pond Road, Roosevelt Ave, Alden Street project. The work would begin early spring if approved. A design public hearing was held on Wednesday, January 27th, 2016 at Mary A. Dryden Veterans Memorial School cafeteria. The appropriation order must be approved first in order for the eminent domain takings to occur. This is temporary use of the properties while construction begins. These items are 10 and 15 on the City Council agenda for tonight. Motions and recommendations, Councilor. There wasn't a quorum, Mr. President, but I'm in favor of it, and I couldn't be there because it was my daughter's birthday. But her and I have spoken to Chris Signoli. If there's any questions after, they can just refer to Mr. Signoli. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of receiving the report of committee, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Any other reports of committee? Councilman Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last week, I held a subcommittee on elder affairs meeting. And in attendance was Janet Denny, who is the director of elder affairs for the city, Alex Martin, who is the director of the Mayflower Senior Center, Mary McGinnis, an administrator from PVTA, Josh Rickman, who is the manager of operations and planning, as well as Anthony Wilson, who is our city clerk, and also a board member on the PVTA board team. So in that discussion, we discussed the on-time performance of senior transportation and dispatch services. And I've received a lot of calls as of late in regards to seniors who expressed concern over late pickups from these particular senior centers in the city of Springfield. Josh Rickman went on to explain the current operations and impediments which may cause these late pickups, and that certainly opened up the discussion. And the present party has realized that there's been some vast miscommunication about where the problem should be directed to once they arise. So the PVTA, who initially stated they had only 4 complaints recovered from their feedback system, realized that seniors in particular did not know who to call when an issue arose. The PVTA relayed also that issues that occur before or during a trip should be directed to PVTA subcontractor Humes, and issues that arise post-ride should be directed to the PVTA themselves. I asked if the PVTA would be willing to release a statement to Jan Denny, the Director of Senior Affairs for the city, regarding how seniors should navigate both entities, which include the PVTA and the subcontractor, and they agreed to do so. So Danny will relay that message to the senior center directors and add it to her newsletter and other mediums as well. Also, starting in September, the Subcommittee on Elder Affairs will have a column in the Springfield Campanile newspaper, which will capture the things discussed in these meetings. So, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of receiving the report of committee, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Any other reports of committee this evening? Councilor Hurst.
Thank you. I just want to let the council know that I did receive communication from the attorney of Uber, and she seems to think that us acting on an ordinance would be a little premature, especially because on an ordinance regulating these ride-sharing companies would be a little premature, especially because she strongly believes that the legislature is going to take this issue up prior to the end of their session on July 30th. So I let her know that I would leave this in committee until July 30th, at which time, if the legislature has not taken this issue up, then we will seek to regulate this issue at the local level. Okay. And she was amenable to that.
All those in favor of receiving the report of the committee, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Any other reports? Councilor Allen.
Thanks, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met at least 2, if not 3 or 4 times since we met here a couple weeks ago. I had made a presentation that night on the pension liability, and we continued to meet on that topic. And I'm happy to report that on tonight's agenda is the establishment of the pension liability stabilization reserve pension liability account. And also happy to report that working with the finance team, TJ, Pat, Lindsay, and Steve, our frequent meetings resulted in a compromise from the mayor that instead of 15% going into the pension liability plan, that it's going to be $1 million, which is 18% or somewhere around there. So we have a happy ending. We need a lot more money in the pension liability account, but we've established that account as of tonight. If we vote for it tonight, it's on the agenda, and I think it's a great step towards recognizing the liability that we have and continuing to work on it. It should be something that I think should be on our mind with all the votes we take as to how much money we have still to go. But considering where we were 2 weeks ago when I first made that presentation, we made great progress, and I'd like to publicly thank the finance team and TJ particularly for the work he did on it, and also to the mayor for compromising and coming up with a great start to what we plan to do. So hopefully we'll all support that tonight, and we can keep working on that issue as it's an incredibly important issue to stay with. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of receiving the report of committee, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Councilor Williams.
Yes, Mr. President, I have 2 individuals for reappointments, and I want to commend Councilor Allen and TJ and the mayor for outstanding work of teamwork. We didn't get everything we wanted, they didn't get everything they wanted, but outstanding job, young man, I want to tell you. Mr. President, State and Federal Relations Subcommittee met tonight for first for the appointment of the mayor's appointment of Jessica Colon as member of the Springfield Housing Authority. Ms. Jessica, can you come forward, please?
Hi.
This is a reappointment, Mr. President. This appointment will take Mrs. Clones to 2021. She is a resident appointee of the city. The board is made up one from the governor, one from labor, and one from resident, and I think the other two come from the mayor's office. But Mrs. Clones is running. It used to be Christopher Court. It was named after Jenny, and Jenny has passed, but she's picked up where Jenny has left off. I really mean that. Has done an outstanding job working with the tenants and the residents, trying to get fair housing. And we talked a little bit, Mr. President, about rent control, and that's going to be coming to the forefront. I know Councilor Ramos has always been very interested in that, and talking to her, some of the rents are really incredible, and folks are having a hard time meeting these rent requirements. But as I said, it's a reappointment to 2021. Mr. President, I think she's a fantastic asset. It's the people's representative on this board, and she has done a good job, will continue to do a good job. So I cheerfully make a recommendation she be reappointed to 2021.
Okay. All those in favor of receiving the report of committee, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Clerk, can you call the order, please? Councilors, I'm just going to say before before Attorney Mr. Clerk Wilson calls the order for this confirmation, we ran into an issue with this in the past in terms of the appointments not being on the agenda with the Historic Commission, and we delayed some of those appointments. The clerks advised me that we can make these appointments tonight, but for future, Mr. Clerk and Councilor Williams, it would be helpful to everybody if they were on the agenda just for notice purposes. It's not going to be a problem tonight, but for the next time, I think it would.
I fully agree with you, Mr. President, and I think I stated that last time out. These should be on the agenda. My years have always been on the agenda, so other councilors get an opportunity a week ahead to see what's on the agenda. And I did pass around what they gave me was just a regular meeting agenda, and I gave each and every individual a copy of that. But you're absolutely right, Mr. President.
Okay, so on the confirmation, Mr. Clerk, if you can call the order.
On confirming the appointment to the Springfield Housing Authority, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Orlando Ramos.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Fenton.
Yes. More than sufficient. Appointment is confirmed. If you'd like to say a few words, ma'am.
Pull your mic down.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity again, and I will do my best to serve the Springfield Housing Authority and the residents of the Springfield Housing Authority. Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Thank you.
Councilor Williams.
The next reappointment really needs no introduction, Mr. President. I'm going to ask Vanessa Otero to come to the podium, along with the Director of Water and Sewer, the new director. And before I get into that, to Vanessa, come up forward. We had a meeting with Water and Sewer about the water main breaks with Councilor Gomez and Councilor Walsh, and a lot of other players were involved, and the state players came in. And as Councilor Walsh said last week, I believe, is that they're on the cutting edge of partnering up with the city, the utility companies, the residents, and trying to make this thing work. So they've been proactive, picked up a lot of information. I just want to give the Water Commission a kudos, because your work really goes unnoticed. And you told us they go from Cobbin Mountain all the way down to your house, and it goes straight up to the mountain. It doesn't miss a beat. So that went over everybody's head, I think. But Vanessa Otero is a deputy director down with New England Farm Workers Council. She's been in the community for a while. And I said something to her, Mr. President, in the subcommittee. I said, last night LeBron James grew up right before us. And I said, Vanessa, I've actually watched you grow up right before my eyes. Really is a star in the city, has done a lot of work, works on a lot of initiatives, state, city, and federal. And just that you're an asset to the community. And thank you for putting another hat on to continue working for the residents of this city. But you're a tremendous asset to the city of Springfield. And thank you for your years of service. I think everyone knows her resume, Mr. President. I don't really need to get in that. So we ask for full confirmation this evening of the great Vanessa Otero.
Thank you, Councilor. All those in favor of receiving the report, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, ayes have it. Mr. Clerk, if you could call the order.
On approving confirming the appointment to the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook absent. Councilor Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Yes. Councilor Walsh absent. Councilor Finn.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Appointment is confirmed. Ms. Otero.
Yes, thank you so much for the generous introduction, for sure. It's a privilege for me to serve the city of Springfield in this capacity. And, you know, this is the sort of utility that folks don't worry about it until it makes the front page. Unfortunately, it's also been on the national front page, and there's a lot of work to do around infrastructure, maintenance, but also preserving, and also making sure that the quality of the water is the best and that we are preserving this public good. And I'm grateful to be a part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any other reports of committee this evening? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Clerk, if you could please call the first item.
The first item on tonight's agenda is the May Revenue and Expense Report.
Good evening, Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight you have in front of you the May Revenue and Expenditure Report. We're fastly approaching the end of the fiscal year, and we'll be working hard in the coming months to close the books and to get you a final report for June, hopefully for the first September meeting.
Any questions from the council on the report? All those in favor of receiving the report say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Mr. Clerk, can you call items 2 through 4, please? Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Items 2 through 4 are the installation of a pole on Norfolk Street, or item number 2 is a report from the BPW on the installation of a pole on Norfolk Street. Item number 3 is a report from the BPW regarding the installation of a gas main pipe on Abbott Street. Item number 4 is a report from the BPW regarding the installation of a gas main pipe on Roosevelt Avenue.
Mr. Signoli, was Roosevelt Avenue just paved?
Good evening, councilors. Different section.
Okay. All those in favor of receiving the report say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is a home grant no match for $1,999,907, sponsored by the mayor.
Good evening, Mr. Plant.
Thank you, Mr. President. This actually is just an increase of the grant of $1,050 from the original grant award. So we're asking the council to accept the new amount.
Any questions from the council?
TJ, what does
Councilor Williams.
What does this home grant? What does it cover, TJ?
Yeah, the home grant's a competitive grant that's given out by community block grant money or federal block grant money. It's designed for local governments to create affordable housing opportunities. We get this funding every year for the last decade. Supports the community in building and rehabbing affordable housing units, providing rental assistance to low income, and then provides some community development flexibility every 2 years. The funds last for up to 5 years, so we can be very strategic in how we spend.
Can you ask the housing director, can we get a written report on that?
Yes.
I mean, what the programs, how they engage, who benefits by it? I mean, it's for affordable housing. Where's affordable housing? And I'm just very interested in what we're doing. And we're not using this money for demolition of historical homes, are we?
No. Not that I'm aware of, but I'll get a report. I'll get a report for you.
Could you give us a written report on that? Thank you. It's $1 million.
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor of receiving the grant, say aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Item number 6.
Item number 6 is a order to accept an FY17 local consumer aid grant, no match, in the amount of $95,000.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Milagros Johnson. I'm with the Springfield Mayor's Office of Consumer Information. It's a program funded by the Massachusetts Attorney General. It's been under the city auspice for 16 years now. And this year we got an increase of $2,000. The program serves residents of Hampden County, so it's not just Springfield, and a third of Worcester County.
Any questions?
Just,
Councilor Williams.
And Ms. Johnson, you're doing an outstanding job up there. So it serves Hampden County.
It does.
Run out of the city. Do they have any workers that work in the county other than you? Do they have an office in Worcester, an office in...
There are 19 throughout the Commonwealth. There are 19 programs like this one throughout the Commonwealth.
You have anybody, I guess my point, you have anybody working with you?
I have one part-time person.
What about all the other towns and municipalities?
They have 2, 3. It depends on... Boston has the biggest population, and we have the second biggest.
Yeah, this covers Hampden County, Mr. President, not just Springfield. I think people just think
it's the entire Hampden. We get calls from everywhere, and I have to do outreach in the communities as well. So it's education to consumers and mediation, conflict resolution.
Because when people call me, I have them call you, and you're doing an outstanding job there year in and year out. I would just hope that next year, this time, you have more staff.
That would be wonderful.
Because what is happening, all the scams and the scheming going on, our senior citizens are getting scammed, and you know it, because you hear about it firsthand. There's a lot going on.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, so thank you.
And I expect that to continue to be a problem.
Yeah, thank you.
The scams and the fraud.
Maybe Marcus can have a meeting on that to get some information out to our seniors.
Thank you. I do appreciate the support that Springfield has continued to give the program.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor of receiving the grant, say aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Grant is approved. Item number 7, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 7 is an order to transfer money from free cash to the stabilization fund in the amount of $2,329,000 and $387.
Good evening, Mr. Plant.
Thank you, Mr. President. This order is to take what will be the remaining balance of certified free cash and move it to our stabilization reserve account, growing our reserves to healthy levels of $42.7 million. It's all part of the strategy that we've discussed with the Finance Committee.
Okay, all those in favor of suspension of Rule 19, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Councilor Allen.
I just want to point out, I'm in support of this. This is not the money going to the pension liability. This 2.3 plus the million going to the pension liability means 3.3 going to one form of stabilization or another out of 4.8 that was in free cash. There's another $480,000 that went to the OPEB trust. So basically 3.8 of the 4.8 that we had is going to some form of savings for future OPEB benefit payouts, pension liability, or for just our general stabilization reserve. So I just want to endorse that that's a pretty great job by the financial team in doing that. Thank you.
Any other councilors? Okay, Mr. Clerk, roll call is required.
On approving the transfer, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Yes. Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Fenton.
Yes. More than sufficient. Transfer is approved. Mr. Clerk, item number 8 seeks to put money into a pension stabilization reserve fund, but we don't create it until item number 14. So why don't we take item number 14 first? So we have somewhere for it to sit for the next 15 minutes.
Item number 14, establishing a pension stabilization fund, sponsored by the mayor.
Mr. Plant.
Thank you, Mr. President. To the members, this is exactly what it says. It creates the account that allows us to deposit that $1 million into it. After this, item number 8 or 9 is the one that moves the money. So
8.
Any counselors? Okay, roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On establishing the pension stabilization reserve fund, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twigs.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Fenton.
Yes, more than sufficient. Fund is created. Item number 8, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 8 is an order to transfer free cash to the Pension Stabilization Reserve Fund in the amount of $1 million, sponsored by the mayor.
All those in favor of suspension of Rule 19, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Plant.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is actually the moving of $1 million to the fund that was just created, so it'll allow the comptroller to set it up.
Any counselors? Okay. Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
On transferring $1 million to the Pension Stabilization Reserve Fund, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twigs.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Fenton.
Yes, more than sufficient. Transfer is approved. Item number 9.
Item number 9 is an order to transfer funds within the department in the amount of $921,050.44.
Mr. Plant.
Thank you, Mr. President. This transfer is for projects that are underway for FY16 that we need to carry the money over into FY17. I have a breakdown of the projects if the council wants to hear what's happening with it. It's projects that we've gotten going, but this money would otherwise flow to free cash if we don't make the transfer tonight.
Yeah.
Questions from the council?
Can we hear?
Councilor Allen?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. Just to follow on to what TJ said, I inquired about this transfer. This is a line that's in every year's budget, and it's for projects that don't normally need, that aren't big enough to require their own bonding or whatever. This year it's the Forest Park tennis courts are on there. South Branch Parkway project is on there. The Van Horn Dam is on there.
Oh, yeah.
This is the projects that have already been started that the money would flow to free cash if we didn't move it. This is a way to move it from that line code in 16 to that line code in 17, so those projects can continue with the funding from 16 carried over.
Okay. Councilor Williams?
Yeah, Mr. President. I'd like to know what these projects are, and you said these projects were started already?
Yeah, there are the grant matches that we need to get going on. Like, I'll just run down the list of the projects.
So, and I'm not against tennis courts in Forest Park. That's already was started?
Well, that's the announcement we made the other day.
I saw the announcement, but when was that started?
Oh, it's not started. It's just earmarked. We earmarked the funding for it, so we don't lose it.
Oh, you mean okay.
So we can get going, so we can have it done for the spring season, or get the planning design done.
Is Adams on that list?
Adams is not on the list because this is for the projects that have been earmarked already. So I believe you had conversations with Pat Sullivan about.
How do you get on the list? Who makes?
Well, this is so there's a grant match for the South Branch Parkway. That's for $241,864.
I mean, I understand all those. I don't want to cut you off. You can save the time. I want to get out of here, but I understand all that. I understand Forest Park, South Branch Parkway, Van Horn, all that. That's all good. I have not heard anything for the inner cities. Adams, Harriet Tubman, Calhoun. How do you, and then they said the project's already started? I don't understand that. You said, we're going to do this project. It's like a wish list to do the project. Then you come here and say, well, we've started it, but it really isn't started.
Well, the designing phases are underway, so this money is earmarked for the overall budget as part of our commitment, and the designing is underway for the projects that are being transferred over into FY17.
So Pat Sullivan,
For the parks that you were asking for, we're having the conversations now about how do we get money earmarked for those parks.
I should hope so. The
And
summer's going to be over.
And the amount of money we're looking for, it all depends on what needs to be done, and that I got to take from Pat Sullivan from his expertise.
Maybe Council will also have a meeting with Pat so we can get these other more urban-centered playgrounds or parks on that list.
Happy to come down.
Yeah, they did a wonderful Regreen did a wonderful job at Adams. They regreened it, they planted, they did all that. But there's, like I said, Harriet Tubman, and then you had Calhoun and Jefferson, all those. We got to get those somehow. Find a way to get those folks on the list. I don't know how you do it, but it would balance your balance sheet a little better to me if you had those on there.
Okay. Any other councilors? All right, Mr. Clerk, roll call.
On approving the transfer, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
No.
No. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Fenton.
Yes, more than sufficient. Transfer is approved. Okay. Mr. Clerk, item number 10.
Item number 10 is an order for an appropriation for taking damages for the intersection improvement project in the amount of $23,820.
All those in favor of suspension of Rule 19, say aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Mr. Signoli.
Good evening, councilors. Over the last year and a half, the DPW has been working on the redesign of the intersection of Island Pond Road and Roosevelt Avenue. We are at a point now to go out to bid on the project through the state Mass DOT. We've held numerous public hearings on this project over the last year and a half, 2 years anyways, and there's kind of two distinct projects that we're doing. On the south side of the General Edwards Bridge, we are realigning Island Pond Road to come in at a better angle to Roosevelt Avenue and installing a traffic signal. And on the north side of the bridge, we're basically reconstructing the roadway in place. As part of the reconstructed roadway in place on the Alden Street side, we're installing new sidewalks, which requires us to get temporary construction easements on all the properties that abut the project, and as well as on the south side, basically all the sidewalk work will require us to gain temporary easements for all of those properties. One of the properties requires a permanent easement where we have to put in a 2.5, 3 foot high retaining wall on one of the properties on Alden Street. All of the impacted property owners have been sent notices, minimum of 30 days in advance of this meeting. We've spoken to a number of those residents who have had questions regarding what is going on. We've explained the project to all of them. They were also noticed at our last public hearing to come to the public hearing as well. So we did all the reach out necessary. In front of you tonight are basically two orders, item number 10 and item number 15. The money that we're paying, which is the $23,000, is coming out of our Chapter 90 funding for the project, and as I stated, Mass DOT is ready to go out to bid on this project in the first week of August, with construction starting basically next April 1st.
Any questions from the council? Councilor Ramos?
Chris, I have 3 very dangerous intersections in my district that I've talked to you about in the past. You kind of gave us an update at the last Indian Orchard Citizens Council meeting, but I just want to get an update on those. Berkshire and Cottage Street, Main and Parker, Berkshire and Bay Street. These are 3 intersections, 2 of which have been a topic of conversation for years.
Yep.
And I'm glad that we're moving forward on Island Pond Road, but I just want to know where we are on these 3.
Berkshire and Bay, we have just submitted to Mass DOT our roadway safety audit. which basically, two things have happened. Let me go backwards for a second. We've received approval from Mass DOT on that project to proceed as a Mass DOT funded project.
Okay.
And our first step is that we've completed a roadway safety audit at that intersection, and we're moving forward with the design on that now. Hopefully in, I'm going to say, a year, we'll be ready to go to construction. Berkshire and Cottage is at the exact same point now. However, we are just getting ready to submit the roadway safety audit on that. So in roughly a year or so, we'll be redoing that intersection. That intersection is not signalized. It will be signalized as part of the project. Main Street and Parker Street, my big problem at that location, it's kind of twofold, was more traffic related than necessarily safety. We had, when that bridge was done over maybe 8 years ago by Mass DOT, one of the things they ended up doing was splitting the traffic signal between Springfield and Ludlow, which caused a lot of timing problems backing it up to the end of Parker Street at Main as well. That is in the process of being restored. We just did the roadway work up there, redid all of the traffic loops, reconnected to the Ludlow side as well. So I want to make sure that we have the traffic flowing there again as well. That whole area, I don't think it was restriped yet, but will be restriped. If it was done, it was done like last Thursday or Friday. But I think it's going to be restriped in the next couple days. So all three of those have been looked at in one way, shape, or form. Main Street is, I don't want to say it's complete because we got a lot of playing with the timing of the signal to deal with. Excuse me, and the other two will be under fully reconstructed intersections.
Just want to make sure we're still moving forward.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Allen.
Thanks, Mr. President. These two items 10 and 15, both involve the allocation of money and then the disbursement of money. And one of the receivers is Springfield College, which is my employer's other than here. So I want to recuse myself from items 10 and 15.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clerk, if you can so note. Councilor Bud Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to stand to commend Chris Signoli for coming to grips with this problem that I live with every day, Mr. President. I'm on Overlook Drive. That is a bottleneck. It's a nightmare. And the drivers and folks coming from wherever they're coming from have hijacked that intersection of East Forest Park. You can't get through there in the morning. The traffic comes from Sumner Avenue all the way across to Page Boulevard and some almost to Chicopee. The residents are very happy, very excited to this because really the Cathedral Side Overlook and Windover and all those streets, folks come over, they come down. I can't get out of my driveway in the morning. And when people come down, they're barreling down, coming off Island Pond, taking a right, going up, coming back down, back to South Branch, back down to beat the light, and then over the bridge. It's been going on for years, Mr. President. You know, you went to Cathedral.
Terrible.
It's been going on for years. I just want to commend you, and hopefully this will bring an end to this misery index that we've been living with.
For the residents of Overlook Drive, yes.
No, not Overlook Drive. hey, when you live on a neighborhood and you do a lot of walking and running, jogging, people stop you. I mean, I got folks, I can't go down by Mrs. Markey or I can't go down by Kathleen Murphy. Could I get tortured? I have to go back out, Mr. President. You understand you have a route that you want to take.
I've seen you
But the residents are I'm very serious. It is.
Thank you, Councilor.
And folks, we've had the police over there. We've had barbarians over there. We tried those traffic stops with it's just everything. Nothing seems to work. And they're mostly out-of-town people. A lot of Connecticut plates. I don't know where they work at. I don't know if they work at Mass Mutual or Bay State or Smith & Wesson. But I do know there's an influx of traffic, and they take over, Mr. President. I really mean that. And when you're young kids on the street, they can't even run. You can't. It's serious. It's a dangerous. He'll tell you it's a dangerous situation. We make fun of it, but it's no fun when and you're the highest tax community in the city, and you live with this. It seems like they should fix it. I've only been over there for 8 years, but it needs to be fixed. I mean, he had to recuse himself because I know he'd like to say something on it. But because of Springfield College. But I hope, Mr. President, this ends all of this. The only thing, Chris, I want to make sure the residents on Island Pond, because you got to take some of their property that they're compensated for.
Yeah, everybody's being compensated. And again, Island Pond, all of the properties we're basically dealing with temporary easements. You know, we're going to be replacing a sidewalk in the exact same location, which means we have to impact your property in order to do it. We're not permanently taking any of the property on the Island Pond Road piece.
Thank you.
Thank
Councilor
you.
Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chris, do you have the range or the addresses that will be affected on Aldridge Street?
Within the order Exhibit A, I have a copy of it right here, as well as I can provide that to you as well. Within the order, we've identified all the parcels, owners, square footage, impacts, and compensation that's given to each one of them.
All right, thank you.
Any other councilor? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Clerk, roll call, please.
On approving the order, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Yes. Councilor Allen recused. Councilor Rook absent. Councilor Bud Williams. Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh absent. Councilor Fenton.
Yes, more than sufficient. Appropriation is approved. Let's take item number 15. That's the taking.
Item number 15 is an order of taking of easements for Roosevelt Avenue and Island Pond Road.
Any questions on this? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On approving the order, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Yes. Councilor Allen. Recused. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Fenton.
Yes, more than sufficient. Taking is approved. Item number 11.
Item number 11 is an order to transfer money from free cash to the dispatch department in the amount of $35,000.
All those in favor of suspension of Rule 19 say aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Ms. Nazzaro.
Good evening. This is a request to transfer $35,000 to cover an overage and overtime expenses that we experienced this year in our department due to an unforeseen quantity of resignations and turnover that we had. But in order to continue to run the department sufficiently staffed, we had to hire people on overtime to come in and work those positions. So we've been feverishly working to hire and continue to keep the department staffed appropriately. It's approximately a 3-month turnaround time to train a new dispatcher to get them on the job. So we're paying them and they're working, but they're not actually performing the duties of a dispatcher. So that kind of eats into our overtime budget. We still need to backfill those vacancies to actually perform the call taking and radio operations duties. So we've got an additional overtime identified for FY17, so hopefully we are not going to be in this position again for next year, but this year we did go over on our overtime budget.
Any questions from the council? Ms. Nazzaro, have you already spent this money?
No, we have grants that we've been using, so we're kind of in the process of reallocating the funds, but we're aware of the fact that we're going to be over by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On approving the transfer, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Fenton.
No, more than sufficient. Order is approved. Item number 12, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 12 is an order for a budget transfer within a department in the amount of $15,300.
Good evening, Mr. Plant.
Thank you, Mr. President. This transfer is to move money in the comptroller's budget to cover additional costs of the contract we have with UMass. UMass has been contracted by the city to do municipal Medicaid at our school department, and they brought in, it's a good problem to have, they brought in an additional $735,000 in revenue than anticipated, so we need to pay the 2.8% fee to UMass for this work.
Any questions from the council? Councilor Williams?
You explain it again?
Yeah. So we have a contract with UMass, their Medicaid office, which provides cities and towns with services to go after and collect Medicaid eligible payments for students that are eligible for Medicaid in our school system. So if they get services, we can bill Medicaid for those services. UMass works with our special ed department to identify those students and collect.
So we come out on the plus side?
Yeah, so we budgeted just over $3 million in revenue. We brought in just over $3.8 million in revenue.
That's what they brought in?
Right. So we were with Public Consulting Group, and we negotiated a new contract with UMass. 4.45% is what we paid PCG, and UMass are paying 2.8%. And so the new contract, they've been hungry, and they've been able to find a lot of additional revenue for us.
Wow.
So.
They have a similar program for Medicare?
Not that I'm aware of, but we can look into it.
Ask around. Okay. Any other counselors? Mr. Clerk, roll call is required. All those in favor of suspension of Rule 19, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, Mr. Clerk, roll call.
On approving the transfer of $15,300, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Bud Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ramos. Absent. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez. Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Fenton.
Yes, more than sufficient. Transfer is approved. Item number 16.
Item number 13.
Oh, item number 13, Mr. Clerk. I'm sorry, I thought that's one we just did.
Item number 13, budget transfer within the department in the amount of $9,462.02.
All those in favor of suspension of Rule 19, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Mr. Plant?
Mr. President, we're actually looking to have this item withdrawn. This was Helen Carlton Harris was able to find the funding within the budget to cover
That's
the
correct.
bill.
Mr. Clerk, the mayor's asked to have this one withdrawn. So, item is withdrawn. I previously received notice about that. I neglected to remove it from the agenda.
Item number
16, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 16 is an order granting a utility easement to Wamiko/Eversource and Verizon for the Paul J. Fitton Public Safety Annex at 50 East Street.
Okay. Good evening, Attorney Breck.
Good evening, councilors. Kathleen Breck, Deputy City Solicitor, City of Springfield Law Department. This is an easement which is necessary for the construction of the renovation and improvements at the Paul J. Fenton Public Safety Annex at 50 East Street. You will recall not too long ago the Army transferred the property over to the city, and the police department's going to be using it for a lot of the very important functions, evidence storage, perhaps the juvenile assessment center at some point, training, et cetera. And this is an easement that's necessary for the construction. We're asking the council to approve it tonight.
Okay, any counselors? All right, Mr. Clerk, roll call on granting the easement.
On granting the easement, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Councilor Twiggs.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Bud Williams. Yes. Councilor Ramos. Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Yes. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh, absent. Councilor Fenton.
Yes, more than sufficient. Easement is approved. Item number 17 is going to stay in Councilor Hurst's Committee on General Government. Item number 18, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 18 is an order amending Chapter 338 of the Springfield City Code relative to establishing a moratorium for non-emergency utility-related street excavation.
Okay. Mr. Signoli.
Thank you, councilors. As some of you may remember, a number of weeks ago, we appeared in front of you to discuss the increase in fees with regard to our permit program. We were also discussing adding a moratorium to excavation in our streets at that time as well. The item was not on the agenda, so we had to resubmit it to get it on the agenda for tonight. And basically what we are looking to do is to install a 3-year moratorium on our paving program and a 5-year on roadway reconstruction. And what that really means is that utility companies will not be allowed to cut into a newly paved street unless it's an emergency situation. Right now, we really don't have much on the books. We've been using 1 year, but after 1 year, utility companies can come in and cut a roadway. Between the DPW and all the utility companies, we really made some advancements in coordinating with each other, and this way our streets in the city can remain in good shape for a number of years before we have to cut into them. The 3 year is basically when we do our regular paving program on those roadways. The 5 year is when we're doing a major reconstruction, a la State Street, Main Street, some of the other Boston Road, etc., where we're using some state funding and some other major funding. The other item I just wanted to mention, the land takings that we did for Roosevelt Avenue in this order right here. Attorney Breck has put those together, and since Bud is thanking everybody tonight, I needed to thank Kathy for putting up with all our stuff to be able to get that done, and we put this together in relatively short order to get in front of the council.
Okay, any questions from the council? Okay, this is an ordinance amendment, so thank you, Mr. Signoli, for resubmitting, but this will be first step. We need 2 more steps after this at the next meeting. All those in favor of passage of first step to Committee on Ordinances, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. First step is completed. Item number 19, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 19 is an amendment to Chapter 270 of the Springfield City Ordinances regarding the establishment of a pawnbroker and junk dealer moratorium.
Councilor Ash.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, over the last several months, my committee's been going out throughout the city. We visited, I think, 6 out of the 8 wards. I'm sorry that we couldn't do the final 2, and I'll explain why in a second. We're actually joined by Deputy Anthony and Captain Duda from the police department as well. And Commissioner Barberi has been attending these meetings, Mr. President, with me, and we've been asked the public to consider extending the moratorium that we presently have in now, which comes due on June 30th, next week or therein. So we're asking this body tonight to extend that moratorium for 3 years. And I can tell you that of all the meetings that we've had, all the wards that we've been to, we've taken a head count at the end of each meeting, Mr. President. I think you've attended one, and many of you have also. And at the end of the meetings, the presentations, we've asked the public to weigh in. And of all the votes that we've taken, not one member of the public voted against what we were asking in terms of the moratorium. All were in favor of extending, and that's at all 6 wards that we visited. So I think that's important to share with this body. And the reason that I think is important to extend this moratorium for 3 years is that with MGM coming on board, we really think it's important to get a foothold in the downtown area without the worry of these pawn shops coming in and being a part of that. We kind of want to attract really positive businesses and restaurants and so on. So we want to get that foothold in and let MGM kind of take place and let the positive elements around them sprout up. So, I thoroughly endorse this concept. Captain Duda and Deputy Anthony can answer any specific questions they have to the police department. But again, the public has weighed in and spoke loud and clear that they are very much in favor of this. And again, thank you for my colleagues for hosting these meetings. We also had a great deal of discussions around general public safety issues that the police department were very generous in their time to come and answer. So glad to answer any questions specifically that you had around this. But.
Councilor Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor S., I was just wondering what, for the other two wards, what was the reason?
The other two wards were 6 and 4, and again, it was more of a timing issue. Both councils expressed interest in having these meetings, but with this moratorium coming to a close next week, we simply ran out of time. It wasn't by any fault of theirs. It just was a timing issue.
Any other councilors? Councilor Twiggs.
The record should show that before sent the communication to chairman and members of council indicating their support for it.
Thank you. Councilor Twiggs. Any other councilors? Okay. All those in favor of passage of first step to Committee on Ordinances say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Are there any objections to me putting this on the agenda for next Monday night? It's a hearings meeting, but if we don't do it that night, we'll have to wait until mid-July. Okay, so Mr. Clerk, could you add second and third step to a week from tonight? Is that something you can do with the notice requirements?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay. So we'll do that. Item number 20, Mr. Clerk.
Item number 20 is an order amending Chapter 49 of the Springfield City Ordinances establishing the Thomas Wasson Local Historic District.
Okay. Is there anyone here to introduce the item? Good evening, Mr. Murphy. You seem as good a choice as any.
I'm it. Hello, I'm Ben Murphy. I'm the Vice Chair of the Historical Commission. The Thomas Wasson House is located at 270 Liberty Street, which is in the Lower Liberty Heights neighborhood. It's one of the older buildings still in the city. Thomas Wasson, if you don't know, was an industrialist in the 1850s who started Wasson car manufacturing. You know, and they were one of the biggest manufacturers in the city for a long time. So this house, along with being the age being historic, the architecture, it's an Italianate villa, and for its owner, it's very historic. And the Historical Commission really approached this with the owner, Mr. Sitterly of Sitterly Movers, who owns the house and the warehouse, when he came in to ask for a demo of the building. We met with him and let him know how important the building was, and he understood and changed his mind, and he actually supports this ordinance to save the building for the future. So we're asking that it become a local historic district to protect it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Murphy. Could you tell us a little bit about the current owner and their position?
Mr. Sitterly, who owns Sitterly Movers. Oh, hello, Mr. Sitterly. Would you like
Mr. Sitterly?
I didn't see you. Good to see you.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
If you have a position on the subject one way or another.
Oh, yes, I'm very much in favor of, I'm very interested in old things, and I think it's important that the city maintains as much of the historical nature as they can. I find it very pleasing to be having my personal office in Mr. Wasson's master bedroom, so I really enjoy it. I think it's really important, and I'm going to try to bring the property back to what it might have looked like. It will always remain the corporate office of Roger Sitterly and Son.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any councilors? Councilor Gomez.
I got the email of this project because it's actually in my ward from Alvin Allen from economic from the Office of Economic Development. I just had a question. I'm totally in favor of it. I like the project. I think it brings definition to Lower Liberty Heights. But has anybody, because you guys are really close to it, has anybody talked to the neighborhood board at all? The neighborhood board.
I know the
Lower Liberty Heights, yeah.
Well, yeah, Lower Liberty Heights was in support of it, and I know notice went out to the other neighborhood councils.
Which council are you talking about? The Lower Liberty Heights. Where do they meet?
Liberty Heights meets, I believe, I think across the street from the old Liberty Branch Library.
At the old library.
Yeah.
Say it again?
At the old library on Liberty Street.
See, but the thing is, where that council is totally separate where you should have went to. Because in that community right there off of Cass Street, those are two separate councils. So people tend to forget that the YMCA is the fiscal agent of the Lower Liberty Heights Council that meets right there in Emilyville Park. And right 2 doors down from you, the president, his name is Thale, he lives right there. Aside from the motorcycle gang that's right next to you guys, that brings up some problematics. I'm not saying the project is wrong. It's just some people in my ward have called to ask about it. I'm totally in favor. It's just I need to really understand if you've reached out to the immediate council, because sometimes they get the two confused.
Well, I'm certainly very aware of the neighborhood. My grandmother grew up on Liberty Street, right up the street from here, that went to Rosary Church. I know the neighborhood very well. The planning department has told me that the neighborhoods, including that one, got notice.
I'm not against that. I love the project.
The
I love it
Historical
completely.
Commission held
just for
a public
transparency.
hearing, and Mr. Sidderly was the only person that comes.
All right, no problem. I just, want to play by the rules. That's all it is. Just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Sure.
All right. Good luck with this. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other counselors? Okay. Mr. Clerk. This is first step, right? Mr. Clerk, is this a 3-step process for?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so we're going to do first step, referral to Committee on Ordinances. This is a 2/3 vote. Can I do a voice vote, Mr. Clerk? Okay, we'll do a roll call, Mr. Clerk.
On approving the ordinance, Councilor Hurst.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Shea.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Twiggs. Yes. Councilor Allen.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Rook, absent. Councilor Bud Williams. Yes. Councilor Ramos.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Ash. Absent. Councilor Edwards. Yes. Councilor Walsh. Absent. Councilor Fenton.
Yes. More than sufficient. First step passage to Committee on Ordinances is affirmed. Next item, Mr. Clerk, item number 21.
Item number 21 is a resolution regarding Chapter 70 Foundation funds, sponsored by Councilor Walsh, Williams, Edwards, Fenton, Ash, Allen, Shea, Williams, and Gomez.
Councilor Hurst.
Thank you. This particular resolve is the result of the expansion of charter schools and the inequitable funding that happens as a result, especially the urban areas like the city of Springfield. I'm going to start off by reading the resolve, and then I'll highlight in the letter that many of you signed a couple of the main points that I think are important and are part of the reason why I'd imagine many of us are or will be in support of this. The resolution reads, whereas the Joint House and Senate Chapter 70 Foundation Budget Review Commission spent a year studying the funding of public schools in the Commonwealth and found that funding was inadequate. And whereas the committee made recommendations that would improve the adequacy of funding, and whereas in the absence of actions on these recommendations, the children in the Commonwealth public schools would be seriously shortchanged, now therefore be it resolved that the Springfield City Council calls on the House and Senate to fully fund the recommendations of their own Chapter 70 Foundation Budget Review Commission. One of the reasons why this is necessary is that the proliferation of charter schools has put great pressure on the Springfield Public Schools operating budget, as the entire Chapter 70 tuition follows each student to their charter school, leaving fewer dollars for SPS students. And while in theory this makes sense, in actuality, there are significant legacy fixed special education and transportation costs that the district must continue to fund in order to maintain services to our remaining students. Pensions and other post-employment benefits, such as retiree health insurance, are significant legacy costs that do not follow the students. Other examples of fixed costs that do not decrease with changes to the student population include administrative support, custodial services, facility repairs and utilities, This means that when a charter school opens and 60 students choose to change schools, our fixed costs do not decrease and now need to be allocated across fewer students. To assist with this transition, the state is supposed to reimburse a portion of the charter assessment fee for the first few years. However, the state has not fulfilled that obligation, and the state's budget continues to underfund the reimbursement due to SBS by what we are projecting as $1.8 million. So I think it's important that we join our colleagues on the school committee and support this as a unified body on the city council.
Okay, any other councilors? All those in favor of passage of the resolve, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Clerk.
Item number 22 is a resolution regarding Senator Lesser's Springfield to Boston rail service feasibility study legislation sponsored by Councilor Shea and Councilor Walsh.
Councilor Shea.
If I may, I'd like to read this resolution and then I'll have a few words to say on it. First off, whereas a strong economic climate is essential to improving Springfield, and whereas our economy to grow, we need to enhance connectivity between eastern and western Massachusetts and to attract growth in the region. And whereas the Massachusetts legislature has an obligation to ensure that growth and opportunities are spread to all corners of the Commonwealth, thereby eliminating regional inequality. And whereas an increased focus on the development of downtown Springfield is expected to add thousands of new visitors annually, whereas rail service provides a safe, reliable option to connect Massachusetts, one that comes at a critical point for transportation development in Springfield with a $33 million renovation at Union Station as a new regional transit hub. The reconstruction of the Knowledge Corridor and other rail bring a steady stream of passengers into this area. And whereas the fastest existing link is now the Lakeshore Limiter, which runs once a day, takes 135 minutes, and whereas improving an existing rail connection between Springfield and Boston will help us connect people, ideas, and jobs and have a transformative effect on our entire region, whereas Senator Lesser has filed legislation that has had bipartisan support connecting eastern and western Massachusetts through rail service, and whereas Senate Bill 1849 will call on the Massachusetts Department of Transportation to conduct a feasibility study on passenger rail access between Springfield and Boston, including an examination of cost, ridership, right-of-way issues, and the resulting economic and social and cultural benefits. And whereas bill passed as amended in the state Senate in fiscal years 2017 and 16, now therefore be it resolved that the Springfield City Council goes on record as supporting Massachusetts Senate Bill 1849, an act to study the feasibility of rail service access to Springfield and Boston. This is, a lot of you know, has been a pet project of mine for some time, long before Senator Lesser got involved, because I've always thought that that will be the most important economic thing we could do for this entire region, especially Springfield. Effective rail service. I like to use the phrase effective rail service as opposed to high speed, and there's a difference. Effective rail service is very affordable, and it would open up the job market here. It would blow open the housing market in this area, and it will help stimulate this entire area. And the other thing I like to point out, when we talk about the cost of this and we talk about studies, keep in mind that when Massachusetts was formed, it's rather unique that we're not the state of Massachusetts, but we're the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And in the formation of the Commonwealth, it was decided when they set that up and formed it, that all the citizens of the Commonwealth would work together, pool their resources, and everyone would benefit from that. But right now, we have a Commonwealth that seems to end at 495. Eastern part of Massachusetts seems to do quite well, Commonwealth theory. Western Massachusetts doesn't seem to do so well. Right now, just to highlight a couple of things when it gets into rail. We all know about the T down in Boston and the Green Line and all the problems they have. But the communities down there have effective rail service into the center of Boston for their communities for housing and jobs. And one of those communities in southern Mass they're extending the line out. They already have good service, but they're running short, and they're overrun by $1 billion, which Boston is not seeming to have a problem to throw in to finish the last few miles of that rail service, while we sit here in Western Mass with nothing. And recently in today's paper, I saw an article where they want to spend several $1 million, maybe a lot more. I don't have the figure to give you the exact one. They want to spend some money in Boston to make better connection between the North Station and the South Station. And still here we sit in Western Massachusetts with no connection at all. So I think that's important to realize that, and that's why I would ask that we support this resolution. I don't think we need a study. We had rail service for years, but if it's going to take a study to get it going, then let's do it. So I'd ask your support on this. I think it's important to this region, and I think it will move us forward. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Marcus Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you also to Councilor Shea for relaying that information in Senator Lesser's absence. I have just a bit of an issue with the term, the very last paragraph with high-speed rail. I think that, to your point, it should be replaced with effective rail service or something to that nature. I've received actually a lot of questions in my own community where Senator Lesser actually held a meeting regarding this matter, and the high speed kind of drew a couple questions in terms of what's the difference between, an Amtrak, for instance, and this type of rail service. So because this is a study and the feasibility of whether it's going to be a high speed rail will be determined, I think that should be, the language should be more generalized in that sense. So I would like to make a motion to change that language.
Okay, so Councilor Williams, you're asking about the reference to high speed at the end?
Yes.
So are you asking to remove the words high speed then and just leave it as rail? Okay. So the motion is to remove the words high speed out of the now therefore be it resolved portion of the resolve. Motion made by Councilor Marcus Williams. Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Councilor Shea. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Councilor Shea?
Well, we've already approved the motion. When they're using the phrase high speed, we're talking about rail service between Springfield and Boston that would get up around 75 to 80 miles an hour. High speed is generally around 120. There's no way, with the way the tracks are laid out, that we'd ever get a 120 mile an hour train from Springfield to Boston. There's too many curves. But at the 75 to 80 mile an hour range, you would get the commute to Boston to be just within an hour or just under an hour, depending on where you made your stops. So I like the phrase effective rail service. I think the Senate has labeled it that way. But certainly I would send the resolve down with the phrase effective rail service, because that's what I think that is more practical as an answer. Because when you do say high speed, you picture this elaborate stuff like they have in Europe and Japan and these bullet trains, and that is never going to be just because of the geography that we have here.
Okay. So we've removed the words high speed. Are you proposing to replace high speed with effective?
No, I was just going to give that explanation beforehand, but it went through.
Sorry.
So I thought it important that you understand what the speed limits could ever be on that line anyway. So they'll never reach high speed.
Any other councilors on the resolve? Okay. All those in favor of passage of the resolve as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Resolve passes. Mr. Clerk, any more business?
No further business before this body.
Okay, everybody, we're going to stand adjourned until Monday, June 27th. That's a hearings meeting. We will also take up at that time the pawn shop moratorium. After that, we're going to be in summer recess, and we will not meet again until July 18th after next week.